I don't consider it the dark side, and I do want to say, Tara interviewed me on Friday for a story, and she did a fantastic job. And so any system that, should allow her to, if it doesn't, even if she was working in PR, and as long as it doesn't conflict with her PR job, she could continue to be in her spare time a journalist, or, half-time or whatever. All those arrangements to me are okay, as long as there's not a direct conflict of interest involved. But what worries me, Meryl, is that as colleges and universities, because so many young people understandably want to go into PR because that's where the jobs are, as they beef up those programs and they start churning out more graduates who majored in PR, you get this uneven order of battle, to put it in adversarial military terms, like the senator was referring to, where you have where the journalists are outnumbered, greatly outnumbered, by the PR people, and then the public is going to get a kind of a distorted version of the truth if that happens. So we have to keep in mind trying to, I don't know if there are any rules that colleges can have on what percentage of their student body is PR majors versus journalism majors, but I'd hope that those institutions could keep in mind that they want to keep it fairly balanced going forward.
Well, to defend the home team, Montclair State University, we've had PR for years, and we will, for the first time in the fall of 14, have a journalism major. So we're trying to get the
That's
tilt
great.
right.
Yeah,
So
good.
you're feeling guilty about having left PR, right? A lot of journalists feel guilty when they leave. They leave journalism and they go into PR. And obviously, I noticed a lot of hands that went up around here earlier when the question was asked whether who's ever had a press card. So I just want to say, I don't think anybody should ever feel guilty about leaving journalism to go into PR. Everybody has to do what they have to do, and eventually, if the business is not going to sustain them in a career, then you've got to make personal decisions. Right now, as we speak, there is a buyout offer on the table for 95 plus reporters and editors at Reuters. If nobody takes it, nobody will be forced out. If all 95 take it, you will have a giant hole ripped in the fabric of that news organization, at least here in this country. I think it's a horrible thing. I've been through this before, and it just really upsets the entire organization when it happens. However, I wouldn't blame anybody for taking it. You have to do what you have to do. We shouldn't have to take a vow of poverty in order to practice this craft. Unfortunately, a lot of people do, but one would hope that there will be enough revenue here to enable people to have a full career in the business. But if there's not, ultimately people have to get a life, they have to make a living, and you should never feel guilty about that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next guest, Michael Stephen Daigle, has worked up and down the Northeast at various newspapers. In New Jersey, he's worked at the Courier News and at the Daily Record. He's now writing fiction and commentary, and he points out to us that there are some other dangers to being a journalist that have nothing to do with shield laws or laws at all. And he's going to tell us a little bit about that.
Good afternoon, thank you. My career was spent in local journalism. I worked for a lot of medium-sized papers that now sadly are small papers, and I had nothing to do with that, by the way. Was taught this business by people who had three basic principles: get it right, don't back down, and with all due respect, Senator, at least once a week irritate a elected public official. The result of that is sometimes subjects fight back. Very briefly, a case in Maine involved investigating what may have been a completely false case of reporting on the part of a district attorney, which resulted in a systemic effort to intimidate us to back off the story, including arresting the lead reporter on a phony traffic accident charge. In New Jersey, in 18 months, I got sued by Mine Hill Police Department because we used their names in a story, the names which we got from their attorney, so it was sort of a silly suit, but still. The second one involved a gentleman running an internet Beanie Baby scam. And I see you're smiling, but guess what? Beanie Baby scams on the internet are in the top 10 annual FBI reporting of scams. Apparently, people who collect fuzzy toys are somehow very gullible. After I visited this guy at his house, he came to he called me at my office and threatened to bring a baseball bat and rearrange my face and blow up my car. I told him that my office was next door to the municipal judge, and I would have him over here, so if he did it, he had a witness. The third one involved a Democrat alderman in the town of Dover who was clumsily trying to take over the party. He told the mayor the sitting mayor, who was a Democrat, he had to resign so this alderman could take his place. He tried to place his wife as the director of an opening in a state-run community development program, and the other Democrats told him that really wasn't such a good idea. And then when we looked at his campaign finance reports, we found that money being sent to him by guys like John Corzine and Jim McGreevey wasn't necessarily going to the candidates they intended, and some of it was showing up in at least 2 bank accounts where only this guy and his wife were the signatories. Effectively, we ended his political career. His response to that was have one of his buddies show up at a public meeting while the Board of Aldermen was discussing like sewer rates. While this meeting is being recorded, yell at me for 15 minutes, including a complete recitation of my career. But when he got down to talking about how he knew where my kids went to school, what my wife did for a living, where I lived, the next day I went down and filed a police report. Against him, the Board of Aldermen, the mayor, the town attorney, the town administrator, and the town clerk, all of whom were sitting within 8 feet of this diatribe. Now that I'm a freelancer working in local journalism, the connective tissue on all of those is that you could take on those stories because I worked for an organization that had editorial support, financial support from the publication, the company that owned the publication, and also there was a legal team behind the organization willing to confront these people either by counteracting the suits or sending them a letter, which we did in a couple of cases, telling them to back off or we were going to take their house. Working in local journalism now where the daily newspapers are now less influential than they were, and the local news atmosphere is a dozen or so small businesses trying to replicate local news. They don't have the resources and they don't offer the protections to local reporters. So the question to the panel is, how can we create a network that offers protection to the publishers of these websites in case someone takes offense, and offer subsequent to the reporters working on those stories that might be controversial, and to get them into the paper, because as you've touched on, that kind of reporting is not getting done on these websites because no one wants to take the risk. How do you kind of insure against the risk that could have you have to put up your house to defend yourself in court?
I mean, community bloggers are the most vulnerable, and that's why I'm so scared of
Well,
the
I'm
shield law that
not
would.
talking about a community blogger. I'm a professional
And a
journalist.
journalist,
who gets
too.
hired to write for this organization.
To get hired.
But they don't have the resources. I mean, they don't pay a lot, so they don't have the legal team behind them.
I mean, there are resources like New Jersey News Commons at Montclair, which is trying to create a community for journalists. But there are networks out there, and it is a hard question because these smaller publications are the most vulnerable. They don't have a giant legal department behind them. And as you said, you're on the front lines in community government, you'll be threatened and harassed, and your livelihood will be put at stake. The best I can answer is just to seek out those networks like New Jersey News Commons or other national publications that can offer resources, and that we can try to create a community that would support your work, as long as you maintain the skills and the professionals of a journalist, and the public supports you, they'll have your back. You know, the public will have your back.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention, as an officer of either the second largest or the largest chapter of SPJ, the largest chapter of SPJ, I've just gotten, in my ear, I just got that word, the largest chapter of SPJ in the country, that you could also avail yourself of the SPJ Legal Defense Fund as well. That's right there for you all the time.
Look, you have properly identified the most vexing problem in our efforts to rethink journalism, and that is local. The strides that new organizations have made, and especially around the business model and distribution and so forth, in local round to about zero at this point. And that is after hundreds of millions of dollars of losses at Patch, significant efforts by some newspapers to do important local digital work. It is the biggest problem in the recreation of journalism. I think most people think that on the national political front, in terms of covering large institutions, even in the sense of covering international affairs, we're making some progress in reinventing journalism. In local, we're almost nowhere, especially when it comes to profit-making enterprises. Thankfully, some generous foundations are underwriting some efforts to rethink local journalism, and they're making some headway. But in terms of creating a business model at our center, which was mentioned a moment ago by Heather, has come up a few times, we're trying to get to that problem, and to date, results in this regard are minimal. Now, there are some local successes. They're underwritten by various people in places like Texas, which has foundation funding and a publication called Texas Tribune, which a number of us are familiar with. But a lot of work, a lot of investment, a lot of energy has to turn to this subject, because the predicament facing most daily newspapers and local television stations is not going to decelerate, it's going to accelerate.
So I just want to commend Merrill, because they're actually trying to do something about it at Montclair State. The nub of the problem, which you've identified, is that people will always be interested in local news because they live in that community, but they won't be very interested in it, interested enough to actually, subscribe to local publications or websites or whatever, unless the reporting is good enough and they're actually learning something more than they just heard over the fence from their neighbor.
Exactly.
And they can't get that really good reporting unless it's protected when it runs up against powerful interests. So this is a huge problem, and I'm actually going to be interested in hearing how the alternative press is trying to deal with it, because I'm very interested in whatever new models might be coming down the pike to address this. But I'm a little bit optimistic about it after we get through a transition period, because local news is the oldest form of news. It goes back to the cavemen and women, and there will always be a market for local news. It's just a question of figuring out the right structures for making it work.
You know that Jonathan is talented in television because he's always giving me a segue, and he's given me the perfect segue to our final speaker. Don't get up and leave when he's done, because we have a surprise for you, but Mike Shapiro, no relation to me. I spell it SCH, and he spells it wrong. But he has created one of these new models, and one of the nice things about it is he pays his reporters. He has told me he doesn't think he pays them enough, but he does pay them, and that's important. But Mike, you come up and you talk about the alternative press and what you're creating.
Thanks so much. Hello, everyone. Basically, I started the alternative press 5 years ago with my wife, and we wanted to create an all-online, objective, daily local newspaper for our town, New Providence, New Jersey. And we got that up and running, and we started to get lots of requests from people to expand to their town. And so we got to the point where we had 8 sites that my wife and I were trying to run. And what we realized was that the further out we went from New Providence, the less effective we were, because we didn't know the community as well, et cetera. So, but we kept getting all these requests to expand, and we had to keep saying no, because we couldn't do it any more towns ourselves. So about 2 years ago, we came up with this idea of licensing the site to people who wanted to start the alternative press as their own business in their own town. And it's just really taken off. And today we have 30 sites up and running. 29 of them are licensed to people from those towns who wanted to start an online local newspaper for their town as their own business. We've had over 1.4 million people come to the site this year. And I think it's a really interesting and exciting model because there's nobody franchising or licensing local news anywhere in the country. So we're trying something pretty novel, and we're learning it from the ground up, and it's been quite the experience. But I guess my question for the panel has to do with, given the reduction in newspaper staffs, it was pretty interesting, but one of our sites in Livingston, they've been doing a number of investigative pieces, and a number of our sites have done things like this, but our Livingston site has been doing all kinds of investigative pieces about the government. And my question, I think, to the panel, and actually their investigation has led to an investigation by the Essex County Prosecutor's Office, which is now investigating there. And my question, I guess, for the panel is that, given the reduction in newsroom staffs and the advent of these small staff newspapers, particularly on the local level, how should such a newspaper perform their watchdog function? In many cases, we've been told, well, you don't have the resources to do this, so don't report on it. Or, just alert the proper authorities, alert the police, they'll take care of it. We've taken the opposite route, which is we do everything we possibly can to investigate situations like that and perform our watchdog function, even on the local level. So my question to the panel is, how do you feel, particularly a local newspaper or an understaffed newspaper, should handle investigating and performing their watchdog function?
Well, all right. I live in the biggest town in Bergen County, and there isn't a reporter that covers the local municipality on a regular basis anymore. There used to be, and that doesn't exist. So every so often somebody will pop in, or if there is some big issue that's already grown to be a big issue, they'll pop in. So I think there's a huge vacuum there. We all know that most of our taxes are going to municipal and schools. That's where most of our money goes as taxpayers in New Jersey. So this is a very important niche that you're covering, and I know you and I have spoken before, but I was left with the impression that there wouldn't be investigative kind of reporting, but just they're covering the meeting and saying X, Y, Z ordinances were just passed. So I'm interested to hear that it's kind of changed, at least from what I originally understood in our conversation. Maybe I misunderstood in our conversation. But this is so important, and there just is not the manpower to fill these niches. We've got, 562 something municipalities in the state of New Jersey and 600 some odd school boards. So at least to have some coverage of what's going on at the local level, and we used to have it, but no more.
May I just ask, what is the source of your revenue, and what kind of vetting process do you go through when you're licensing these sites?
Yeah, well, in terms of revenue, basically what happens is that we provide all the tools to somebody to start their own newspaper. The training, the site, the hosting, all that stuff. They don't have to worry about any of that. What they do is they report on the news in their town, and they do the ad sales for the ads in their town. In some cases, about 50%, it's one person who does both, but in 50%, it's two or more people, so that way editorial can be separate from the sales side. So it's up to the individual licensee. We screen them in that we want them to be objective. They have to agree to follow the Society of Professional Journalists ethics, and we also provide content guidelines, so they have to do, they have to cover every town council meeting, they have to cover every Board of Education meeting, And we have this kind of content guideline that they need to follow so that they're truly serving their community. And that's basically how it works. So they go out and they sell advertising to local businesses in their town, and they keep 90% of the revenue, and they kick back 10% to us to cover our costs and things like that.
So is there an ongoing review that you conduct of the sites?
Yeah, and in fact, we have a full-time managing editor whose sole job is to quality control every single site, and they give feedback to the licensees, they train them, and then they give them feedback about their content. They can also go into those sites and make changes if the article's not correct and fix it right away. We have a full-time sports editor who trains them in terms of covering how to cover sports and everything involved with that. And then we also, we provide training not only before they launch, which they have to complete before they launch their site, but also throughout the time that they are a licensee.
Well, I don't think that anybody would ever dispute that you folks are journalists.
Yeah, and I didn't go to journalism school, so I wouldn't be one in Nigeria, but at least I am one here.
Jonathan said a moment ago that our interest in local goes back to the days of the cave people, because we do care about what happens next door and in our communities. But, there really doesn't feel like there's a lot of demand and the public really upset about the fact that the local newspaper is dying. You might see more support for civic efforts and for nonprofits and for small local sites if there actually were a demand issue. But I don't know that there's a demand issue. And as somebody who both has sought venture capital and as a venture capitalist, nobody in the investment community believes there's any future to anything local other than directory-based services. So maybe we have a media literacy problem that educational institutions like my own need to solve. Maybe we have a civic engagement problem, which voter turnout and lack of interest in local might suggest. But I'm not sure there's demand right now, and I say that sadly, but I don't really know. But I can tell you that dollars are not pouring into solving this great big problem left by the death of the daily newspaper.
That's really depressing. I mean,
Sorry.
I think sometimes demand is created by the quality of the supply, so that, if there's a local murder and the local town paper does a great job in telling you about it, and you realize that the New York Times didn't cover it, barely covered it, and the only place you have to find out about it is your local paper, there's going to be some demand. So here in Montclair, BaristaNet is doing well, because people feel like there's a conversation on BaristaNet, that they're getting information. Montclair Times, I think, is doing well. So if you have some quality publications, people are going to respond. So the question for the alternative press is, can you bolster those local efforts, your franchisees, with more than a quality control managing editor and a sports guy? Can you have, for lack of a better word, can you have SWAT teams, when you get up to a scale where you can support it, where you have 3 or 4 really experienced investigative reporters in northern New Jersey who can, even though they're not from that town, can move in and conduct a really professional journalistic investigation. And then when that starts to happen and you get your SWAT teams coming in, then people will see things, then you'll get more Livingstons. You'll get more cases where people go, this paper is really killing it.
Yeah, and even like last night in Fairfield, there was a big, shooting that took place, and we broke the story. Our West Essex TAP broke the story up in Fairfield last night. And it's a part of also being truly local. Like in that case, really ingrained in that West Essex community, they were the first to know about it. They were on the scene first, and the TV and NJ, and Star Ledger, everyone else, eventually caught up, but it was hours behind when we were already on the scene.
The other sobering part of my depressing analysis, as Jonathan put it, is that we no longer play chess with our next-door neighbors. We play chess with them across the ocean. Mm-hmm. And that social media and the digital world has changed how we define our sense of community and what's important to us. We spend more time on Facebook than we do in City Hall, obviously. And there's good and bad in that, and one of the bad things in that, one could argue, as Jonathan just did, is that this lack of engagement has lots of consequences, and good journalism might solve it. But on the other hand, you know, I know a whole lot of people who feel closer to their digital community than to their geographic community. And that's a fact of contemporary life.
But all you have to do is look at a town meeting, you know, or a school board meeting when there's a controversy. And nobody goes at all until there's a controversy, and then there's a huge throng of people. So there is still a, you know, a strong local connection. It's just that the sinews, you know, the connective tissue is been so disrupted that it's, you know, it's a question of reassembling. And that's why I'm so glad that you guys are involved in this.
And we find out about those controversies largely through email networks, public pages that citizens set up, and not necessarily through news organizations. There's just no journalism and fact basis around all that, and that's what we have to figure out how to address.
Well, thank you very much. I know that we've been going on for a while, and we're going to give you the surprise in just one more minute. Dave Levitt is standing up. And SPJ is known for its contest, and since we now have all of your email addresses, you're all going to be invited to contribute to the contest, and make entries. But besides entries, we need judges. So we're going to. The surprise is that we're going to have a coffee hour. We have coffee and dessert for you. We didn't advertise that. And you will get a chance to meet and mingle. I know we haven't had a lot of audience participation because it's just been so packed with really good stuff. But seek out Dave Levitt, and you can be a judge in the SPJ contest. And Rebecca Baker, are you still here? I am here. Rebecca is our regional director. She's director of SPJ for the entire Northeast. She's going to say something briefly, and then I'm going to say one last thing, and then you're going to have some coffee.
I'm Rebecca Baker. I'm on the national board of SPJ. Can we just give a wonderful round of applause? And thank you, everybody here. Go to the podium, please. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, I said thank you everybody for coming. This has been a stellar event that SPJ has put on today. And everyone here should leave with two things. One, a full stomach from all the wonderful sandwiches and the coffee and dessert that we're going to be serving. And one of these. If you did not get one of these when you came in, you will be getting one when you go out. This is an application to join SPJ. You do not have to be a journalist to join SPJ. If you believe in good journalism, high quality journalism, ethical journalism, you should be a member of SPJ and support things like the Legal Defense Fund, which part of your membership dues go to support. Things like online training, which is only offered to SPJ members, multimedia training, things like that. That's also a benefit of membership. And again, if you believe in good journalism, quality journalism, I urge you to join SPJ, because that's what we do. We support ethics, legal defense, and journalism advocacy. We are fighting tooth and nail to get a federal shield law passed. We have people working on that with federal legislators. So if you support SPJ, if you support what we believe in, if you support good journalism, please join us. Thank you very much.
I promised there would be audience questions. There's one very important question.
Hi, my name is Clifford Culwin. I'm the immediate past president of the Montclair Public Library Board, and it's a pleasure to have you here and to host this event. I just wanted to pose one more question, and that's the following. Montclair as a community is very dependent upon our hyperlocal websites, as are many others. Those of us who live here are keenly aware of this. When you read many of the articles on this site, there are quite a few comments that are added to them. An extraordinarily large number of those comments are unsigned. People are allowed to do this. Many of those comments utilize what Mr. Alter referred to before as ad hominem attacks. often stating as fact information which readers may know not to be true. One of the websites locally, The Patch, even offers the opportunity for guest bloggers to say whatever they wish on a blog without signing their names. I'd love to know what you think about that. Thank
I
you.
just want to address that, I want to address that quickly, because I was talking beforehand about this as it applies to the alternative press, which does not do this. And I just think it's outrageous that Patch allows this in this community or any community. And if there's anybody here from Patch, I'd love to have a conversation with them about it. Maybe Patch isn't here, but this is just wrong. And there's not really any excuse for people being able to introduce, personal attacks under the cover of darkness. It's just not what journalism is supposed to be about.
Michael used to be with Patch, so we're going to let him.
It's just wrong.
Yeah, we spent a great deal of time addressing anonymous comments, most of which were completely erroneous, misinformed, quoting stuff they were making up as fact. And unfortunately, what it devolves to is a series of so's your old man, so's your old man, so's your old man, and all the way down the line, after which. A great example, and I wasn't there when it happened, but the successor of the company that I worked for in Maine, it's still a group of 5 weeklies, stopped online commentary completely because they could not get. They did a quick survey and found that people would not comment online if they were asked to use their own name. So they stopped online comment completely because it was just nonsense. It was just people sniping at each
But
other.
why can't you just edit it so that if there's a personal attack that alleges facts that are often not true, that's just taken down, and they can express their opinion about something
I think some of it
in
occurs
a
at
harsh
Patch
way,
because
but.
essentially there's one person running the site, and they have to make something like 7 new entries a day to keep up with the speculation of the news. Their next level of editorialship is miles away, and it gets by them so quickly that they do not make the effort, and they should. You're absolutely right that it doesn't add anything to the discourse. And in one town that I covered, there were a couple of people who routinely quoted stuff that I think they wrote in their cellar as fact, and it was driving a whole discussion in the town that was completely erroneous, and we couldn't find a way to report accurately on what the inaccuracies
Well, that's happened in Montclair very recently, the same thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the alternative is to just have no comments, if you don't have the volunteer manpower to police them. That doesn't mean that people need to be censored if they have a very strong opinion about something, but alleging facts without any substantiation and without their name attached is really a problem.
Newspaper days, you'd write a letter, you would have to verify your name and address.
Right.
We would call people up and say, hi, this is Bob Smith at 123 Main Street. The vetting process has sort of devolved as fewer people are working at these sites.
Well, if you just said you can't do it without a name and address, you would get fewer comments, but what's the cost of that? So you get fewer comments, so what? Now, that should just be the rule.
I don't see why, how allowing anonymous comments adds anything to a conversation. It just lowers the level of the conversation, and it also opens up it opens it up to abuse. I'm not sure about the local sites, but the Yahoo and other places where you see thousands and thousands of anonymous comments every day. I'm convinced that a lot of those comments are from well-funded groups that pay people to troll through websites to look for issues that they have an interest in, to put out what they want everybody to believe is the popular view. And it could never exist. That kind of abuse could never exist if you had people putting their names to their comments.
I support anonymous vetted comments. I think, and I have no problem with anonymity as long as it's reviewed before publication, but that's a trade-off.
Just the other side of it, when I was working on this Beanie Baby story, one of the things that the guy used as a selling point when he was about to scam you was that he received thousands and thousands of positive eBay comments. So I printed them all out. Guess what? He sent them all.
Sure.
When you looked at the timestamp, there were 200 positive comments arriving at the same exact second. So you create your own media at that point.
Well, it used to be direct mail. Now it's another vehicle. I'm not sure what the moral of that story is.
That you don't trust anything online.
How about direct mail? Trust that?
Nah, throw it away. It's good, it's good recycling.
How about newspaper inserts?
If it's direct mail, you know where it's coming from.
How do you?
You know where your direct mail is coming from?
Well, it's.
Post Office Box 123, Wilmington, Delaware?
It says who it's from. They usually want money, and they have to send it somewhere, so it's not hard to figure out.
I mean, I agree with you, Merrill, that you can have, edited, vetted, anonymous comments, but if you don't have the manpower for it, then the choice becomes whether to allow any comments or anonymous or none. And if you don't have the manpower to vet, then you have to go with the signed comments.
The curious thing that I saw in all the election material that I was receiving at home or getting by email, and this is, I think, is a direct result of the Supreme Court ruling, is that the candidate who was opposing whoever was sending out this smear piece didn't have to put their name on it. I was watching a TV ad out of Pennsylvania. The two candidates that they were talking about were the worst people in the absolute world, but they didn't mention what race they were seeking a seat in. They didn't mention who their opponents were, and down at the very bottom was the scroll, supported by blah, 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 blah. It was just a complete attack ad, and you get that stuff in the mail, and you look at it and say, who sent this out? I mean, as a voter, if you're going to that effort to smear your opponent, I want to know who you are so I can vote against you.
Well, that's a whole other panel.
And now for something completely different.
Well, I just want to say on that topic, the other side of freedom of the press is you got the right to hit delete. So if you don't like what people are posting on your website, you have the right to erase it. Simple. Anyway, my name is David Levitt, and I am the contest chairman for New Jersey SPJ, and it's kind of our signature ongoing effort, and we are in constant extreme need of manpower. So take this down if you have a pen. If not, come up to me later. DML125@verizon.net. DML125@verizon.net. Send me a message. Bob talked about needing people to be judges. We do need judges. We need judges in about 6 months from now. But right now, we need people to sort of go through our categories, make sure that we're explaining them properly, making sure we have the right categories. Do we have too many in one area, not enough in another? I could use an extra set of eyes. I could use a couple extra sets of eyes. If you contact me, I'll give you a job to do, and, maybe not immediately, but, I think I can put you to work. This would be all right, I guess I should back up and explain. One of our core missions is to give an annual set of awards to the best in New Jersey journalism every year. It's one of the more prestigious awards given out in the state. We have about somewhere between 70 and 80 categories for daily newspapers, weekly newspapers, blogs, independent websites, TV, radio, number of categories. And it's a Herculean effort, and it's done by a bunch of people who are not only not getting paid, but have other full-time jobs. Some of us, several jobs. And so we're constantly behind the 8 ball, and the more manpower or woman power we can bring to the task, the easier it is on all of us. And you know, if 1 or 2 of you volunteer, we'll give you a lot of work. But if 6 or 8 of you volunteer, or 10 of you volunteer, then we'll have, you know, it'll be a lot easier to spread the assignments around so that nobody has too much to do. Anyway, so.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we said something about someone, we didn't realize. Robin, I'm just going to, did you want to say something? You are the school board president, right?
When I started as the school board president, I was 5'10" and blonde. Look at me now. You can see what it's done. I found the last conversation very interesting because I've been on the receiving end, frankly, of the things that are not true. They're stated as fact. They're completely untrue. And then there's a ripple effect. And it just goes on and on and on and on and on. And it's very painful. I don't know any other way to put it. When your name is repeated over and over and over again, I have a kid who is in California. He gets Google alerts. We used to get them because of his writing. Now he's getting them and he's seeing these horrible things written about his mother that are just not true. And so it's my integrity, it's my reputation, and it's very painful. I bleed whether you put the knife in my heart through the front or the back. It's the same thing. And so I think we all deserve a little better. I'd like people to take a step back and a deep breath and say, did somebody really write this that had, you know, this brave anonymous poster? I mean, really? So, you know, tomorrow night I'll put myself out there, and then the anonymous stuff will just continue on the blogs afterwards. And it's not easy being green sometimes. So, thank you.
Okay. I think there will be further questions, but they will be during the coffee hour. So remember, in the back, we're selling Jonathan's book. We're selling Professor Healy's book. In the front, we're going to be showing documentary trailers about New Jersey, made by New Jersey filmmakers. Thank you very much for coming. There is coffee. There is coffee and cake in the back. There's